We have an amazing hands down power couple Wednesday today, and I'm just so excited. So welcome with Inside with Dr. Scott. I am Dr. Scott, and so excited that you're joining in. Get close, get your water, get your coffee, because you have so much to learn this evening. Before we get started, I do want to present just a few disclosure statements that the panelist discussion today is based upon his or her perspective and values, research, and or area of expertise. The discussions are not reflective of any of the presenter's workplace, higher education institution, constitute of place of employment. But today we are going to have an opportunity just to really deep dive into a few things. We're going to talk about education and dual careers and what does it really mean to support one another as a couple, and really the benefits of online learning. And today we're talking about K through 12. And so I'm so glad you asked, what is K through 12? And so of course, K is kindergarten. And this really focuses on, we can go before pre-K 3, pre-K 4. Those are the roles before kindergarten. Kindergarten typically starts at the age of 5 and then 16. 16 marks the 4 years, 12 through 16, in which the average student typically pursues college. And so we're so excited to talk about just the whole gamut this evening. I would love for my first guest to introduce herself.
Well, good evening. My name is Natasha Faison, and I am the Director of Community Service and Engagement and a Professor of African American Experience at Lincoln University. I have been married to this wonderful guy sitting beside me, Dr. Frederick Faison, for 19 years. And we're just passionate about education. We also serve in ministry, so we're passionate about sharing the gospel, and also whether that's through singing or through voice or through the message. And then also just really passionate about education and whatever realm that we're being used to help and uplift our community, and just raise a generation that will be, active in their own communities, and understanding how to really matriculate through their education. So we're trying to be a bridge. Yeah.
And I think to just give some framework for the Faisons, I think you could say we creatively inspire through education. We both come from ministry and music heritage. My wife is from Richmond, Virginia, and I'm from Raleigh, and we met at St. Augustine's College. In fact, we met in the concert choir. And so our years together at St. Augustine's College helped to make us aware of our gift sets to serve in education and ministry. And so we just creatively inspire. I serve at Lincoln University also as the university chaplain. And I'm also the Associate Vice President of Student Health and Wellness. So we work to just try to creatively inspire young people to live a legacy life, as we say.
So thanks, Dr. Scott.
Thanks, Dr. Scott.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. and Mrs. Faison. All right, Ryan, you're up next.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Antonika Ryan. It's my husband, Dr. Ryan, Dr. Dante Ryan. We are the co-founders of the Ryan Institute. We are a full-service academic support company based here in Baltimore, Maryland, where we serve scholars from birth all the way up through adults. We say from birth to college, but we also have adult scholars that we have worked with, whether it be for test prep. We've supported educators looking to get their certification, praxis, and on through upper education with master's degrees and things of that nature. So basically what we do, we support our children, we support our families in everything that they want to do. in life, not just academically, but also the whole child. I know social emotional learning is like the big tag word, especially for what's going on with coronavirus and everything that has happened with education. But honestly, we have kept that as at the forefront of what we have been doing for years. I myself come from Sacramento, California, to Morgan State University, which is where I met my husband. My husband is a full-bred Baltimorean. So he's all Baltimore everything. And so our first love and passion is to pour into the children of Baltimore and to give back and to serve here, even though we've had the opportunity through the things that we've been able to do to support children and families across the U.S.
So Dr. Ryan here. I don't really have much to add that my wife hasn't already spoken, but born and raised in Baltimore, proud alum of Baltimore Polytechnic Institute, as well as Morgan State University with my bachelor's, as well as my doctorate in engineering. And so we just kind of took our passions for just helping others, and then my love for mathematics and science, and just kind of bridged it into an academic support company. And since we started our company back in 2012, we've been able to serve thousands of students all over the country. We've been fortunate enough to do virtual learning and remote tutoring. This is actually our third year now that we've been doing it, but we've been able to reach students all over the country because of our virtual learning and tutoring platform.
Thank you so much for sharing. Both of you talked about, you met at Morgan State University, you met at St. Augustine's College, now St. Augustine's University. I just want you to share your educational journey. When I think about both of your households and how blessed they are to have the terminal degree that your household owns, and I say owns together, my philosophy, I don't know if you want to own that, is because, when you go through the terminal degree, you don't go through it by yourself.
Right.
The weight of it that impacts your household is real. So Ryan, talk to me a little bit about what your educational journey has been, and then I know that you have children. How do you perceive your educational journey as a legacy?
All right, so I'll go first on this one. So regarding my journey, I like to tell my students that I've been fortunate enough to go from a high school diploma to a doctorate in engineering completely free. Like I have never taken out a student loan or anything like that. And it happened because I just so happened to do well on the SAT exam. Now I know a lot of people have different feelings, and when it comes to those standardized tests. But one of the things that I try to get students to understand, that whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, to me is irrelevant. At the end of the day, that's what's in place currently. And allow us to help you do the best that you could possibly do on that particular test, so that it can now put you in a position to earn merit-based scholarships and so forth. So I've always had a strong ability to digest and learn math and science. I've also always had a really good ability to teach it as well. And so for me, it was somewhat natural to be in a STEM field. And so outside of the Ryan Institute, I also run an engineering consulting firm for the federal government. And, so I've been able to just follow my passion. But I've also realized that, one of the things about helping students the most is helping students identify their strengths, right? Just because a student doesn't score in the 1400s on the SAT doesn't mean that isn't that they are not a great student. It very well may just simply be because their strength is not in that particular area, right? And so one of the things that I think is very important that we do is always help students identify where their strengths, but then also the areas that they need to develop further, identify those areas, and then help them identify how to improve those areas, right? Because at the end of the day, we don't want to identify a developmental area and then leave it that same way, right? We just want to kind of build on it, right? And so that's something that I feel as though I've been, fortunate enough to be able to do. And then my wife, I think, with her background being in education, I just pick up so many tips on how to properly, lesson plan and how to properly, educate students, and basically really how to identify their particular learning styles. Because for me, I always felt as though, hey, this is the way I learned it, this is the way I'm going to teach it. But it was based on her experience as a teacher, I began to realize, oh, you know what? If there's 5 different students, guess what? Every student can learn it differently. And so I got to be very flexible in my approach on helping students achieve, or tutoring students in their particular, subjects or whatever it may be. And so when we talk about my journey, like I said, I've been fortunate enough, all in Baltimore. I've never left Baltimore outside of working, right? I've always went to school in Baltimore. I always told my family, my wife, that I'll probably never literally move out of Baltimore. I might move there. Like I lived in Texas for a little bit. I lived in Arizona for a little bit, but I would never truly move outside of Baltimore because I really do love the city. I love the students, and I love what we can do to help our students. And so that's kind of like my journey. And at Morgan, I was fortunate enough to meet her. And now we have 2 amazing children. I kind of let her talk about how our educational journey has kind of impacted them, because we're starting to see, I think we're starting to see some overlap as far as, or kind of not necessarily overlap, but I guess where we left off, kind of like where they're beginning to pick up. So I'll kind of let my wife speak about that.
Yeah. So yeah, we met at Morgan. We actually didn't meet until he was graduated and I was finishing up. Both of us are in Greek letter organizations. He's Alpha, I'm a Sigma Gamma Rho. So kind of in those circles is where where our lines crossed. And so after I graduated, we shortly after that we had our son. And so I started teaching in the city, and literally before I had my son, the kids that we worked for in the city, those were our babies before we had babies of our own. And literally, he'd be like, "You bringing these kids home?" And I'm like, "Yes, they need, whatever they needed." I was that teacher. They need this, they need that. Oh, they don't have this. And I'm, he's like, "You're spending all this money on these kids, and he would just, at first he really didn't understand it. But when he started to come in and I was having him come because, male presence, it does something different for the children when they see, especially in particular, our children, children of color, where they see, Black men, that are not necessarily the athletes, and no shade to the athletes, but I mean, the Black men that are professionals and that are successful, that having that opportunity for the kids to see that is where the impact and where it was born, where really our company was born. We had started a civic leadership club mentoring program at the school. We had young men and young ladies really just kind of instituting and giving them skills that were not necessarily being taught, life skills that were not being taught in the formal curriculum. And we had a principal that was super supportive to every idea that we brought to the table. And that's really where our company was born out of. My husband, he on his days off, he would come, he would volunteer, he would get his frat brothers to come, just to love on these kids and really show them that they did not have to be victims of their circumstance. And then when we had our own children, it just kept growing. He was like, I think we want to do more of this. This is some more things. We want our children to have these opportunities. And because of our education, our children are afforded certain opportunities, but we want the same opportunities to happen for the kids that we had already been serving. So that's where that came from. And so, I've actually been working with children since I was a child myself, in ministry, at the nursery of my home church, my childhood church. I started working in the nursery on Sundays that I wasn't serving on the youth choir. And that's where my love for children really started to grow. So ever since then, you know, I knew that I wanted to work with children. I come from a background of educators, my grandmother, my great aunts, educators. And so it's literally in my blood.
Thank you so much for sharing. Before we go to Dr. and Mrs. Faison, I want to give you a plug, though, that just because Dr. Dante Ryan is a true Baltimorean, there is hope. My Baltimorean, we just left and moved to Harford County after years of begging. So there's hope. Hang in there, girl. Dr. and Mrs. Faison, please share. So part of it is, you know, share your educational journey. But I really want you to talk about like the dual career. You know, you both are really working 2 full-time jobs, and like, what's that impact?
Yeah, it's a big impact. Thanks for asking that question. Working a full-time job it's like we are in 2 different kinds of ministry, if you will. But working, you know, during the day for our students and in the classroom, or if it's, you know, serving on campus, or even prior to that, when I was in elementary education as well, a lot of that had to do with, you know, looking at how do we serve children the best that we can, but then also we were tied to ministry and trying to really be obedient to what God really called us to do as well. And a lot of times we're having to balance and make sure that we have a balance concerning our schedules, balancing our relationship together, you know, paying attention to that time. It's very important that we keep each other as priority. In addition to the demands that people would ask us to do, you know, and even our students today that we serve, you know, we almost work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day because of it. And, you know, we're working on the weekends. I mean, you know, sometimes Saturdays are our only day to kind of regroup and see each other. And yet we're still preparing for Sundays because we have services here on the campus as well. And from choosing the music to the responsive reading to preparing for sermons to having students to assist us in worship and preparing them. In addition to, again, just the day-to-day or teaching class, you know, that kind of thing. So we have really had to be very prayerful, but very intentional about our relationship together, in addition to making sure that we're honoring all of the demands of the work world as well as ministry. And we really try to see all of it as such, as opposed to trying to separate it and say, well, this entity is one form, but we see it as all of being what God has called us to do, whether it is of the secular nature or if it is of the spiritual, right, of the spiritual nature. But we see it all, right, exactly. We see it all as ministry. What say you,
Doc, before you take it over, can you give us some tips? Like, you talked about what you're doing, but I need 3 strategies. Like, give viewers 3 strategies specifically that you're using, because, you know, the world has coined work-life balance, but you know, to know it and to do it are 2 different things. So what are some strategies you would suggest?
Well, I would say, you know, we're very intentional about having mealtime, listening to one another. We're very, very intentional about checking in on each other during the day, whether it's a love note, a text, a call. If I need to meet him in the middle of campus to say hello, you know, something that is very intentional and specific to make sure that we're keeping us intact so that we can minister to other people. And then the other piece is, and sometimes you do have to look at your schedule and say no. Yeah. There are some things that you have to commit to say, families first. We just have to say, well, we're unable to do it this time. Yeah. Let's think of another time or reschedule. And my priority is that when I'm asked to do something, especially if it's something even in the evening hours or if it's on the weekend, we try to check our calendars, together. And I won't just say yes without talking with Dr. Faison first to see where we are, to see what we have scheduled. And then, we're able to answer whether yes or no. But, sometimes, audience, it is okay to say no.
That's
to
a word
keep
right
that
there.
balance. Yes, to keep that balance, because when you're in demand like the Ryans, right. When you're in demand like that, there is so much opportunity for you to say yes to. And that's what happens with us. There's so many different kinds of opportunities that we can say yes to, but balance for me is also being able to say, well, not at this time, or can we choose a different time, or if it just means no, and then keeping that family time intact.
That's good. Thank you for sharing those. Go ahead, Dr. Faison.
Well, I just wanted to shout out to our Ryan couple over there.
Yeah, our new
Black
friends.
Power, Black
Love,
friends. We love it. And I was thinking about my own experience. You asked about our educational journey, and I hadn't thought about it, but Natasha comes from a family, probably 3 generations at least, that's from a college experience. Her parents, her grandparents, and her. But when I came to St. Augustine's College, I was the first generation coming out of sharecropping fields in Roseville, North Carolina, came 20 miles up the road, did not have the slightest about what was going on in college. And I remember my mother just saying, okay, I got you here in line, and you got to do the rest of it, Frederick. And so being able to be at St. Augustine's College and encountering Natasha through the arts. Brother Ryan was saying his gift is, the sciences and all of that stuff, and the math, but I was on the other side. It was the arts. I was that different kind of learner. My family has a very strong musical heritage. And so I learned creatively. And so I was just thinking about that question that you asked. Imagine me meeting Natasha in the choir, learning that I could learn. Natasha was very, very instrumental when I first got to college. I won't say what my grade point average was, but I got with her because I thought she was cute, and did not know that she could contribute to my curiosity, if you will, but also to my grade point average. And what I've learned from her, Brother Ron was talking about his wife, she always had her stuff together. I don't know what happened to me, Dr. Scott, when I was entering entering St. Aug, but she just helped me. I was a creative learner. I was everywhere. And I too understand, Brother Brown, when you said a sister helped you to just sort of formulate your little plans and stuff. And hanging around Natasha had that impact. So much so that I ended up graduating from St. Augustine's College, winning a scholarship to study abroad in England. But still, before the internet, when it was really slow then, that it took a full day to get the messages back and forth, I would send Tasha my papers to have a look at. Then I graduated from there, came back, got another master's of divinity, and then just recently, 2 years ago, did my doctorate in education. But what I'm trying to say is that the whole time, Natasha has been a part of me accomplishing that. So you are right, Dr. Scott. It is a credit to our household. And I want to take all that and make sure, first of all, that I be honorable to her. I don't want to get here now and be Dr. Faison when I was taught from the floor up. and not remember her. So she still deserves that time. That's been very interesting. And I know the Ryans can agree with me when I say this, is that when you have accomplished, you want so much to impart that. And so whereas you all are ministering in Baltimore, we are given a campus. And so anybody who knows if the Faces are on campus, Dr. Faison, can you come over tonight at 9 o'clock and be a part of this so and so and so? And I'm like, I can do, hold up, let me call the chicken. So it's always that balancing act. It's us wanting to be a part. We have this unique legacy that we've not been blessed with children, but Lord knows we've taught everybody else's children. I just have a PhD candidate now that's calling me, one of my students, and teaching at 2 HBCUs, teaching abroad, and us being here. You just amass children from everywhere. Children know when you care about them, and they know who care. And so we're just grateful just to be a part and to make that impact and to care for children and try to give to them what we receive.
And I think adult children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our 16th grade.
Yes. Lots of them, because they hold on the longest.
Yeah.
I really want to get Antonika and Natasha's opinion on really outlining some ways in which you were able to support your husbands while they went through the process. And I think it's so important to share, because one of the things that women who in their own right, are great all by themselves. And this balance of, how do I support my husband without losing who I am? So, Antonika, why don't you go first, talking about like different ways you were able to support Dante through the journey?
So, our journey was, I don't want to say, well, I'm not a doctor, so I'm the novice amongst this crowd. But what I try to do is, I tried to, well, first of all, I made sure that our household was taken care of. Our children, at the time when he was finishing, we had our daughter during the time he was going through the doctorate program. We had my own health crisis during the time he was going through his thing. Like, there was a lot outside of what he was being asked of academically. There was a lot of things that were going on while he was pursuing his doctorate. And I think that I'm a firm believer that, God doesn't make any mistakes. So I think that through while those different challenges and things that we face during his doctorate, in pursuit of his doctorate, I was the one that was working full time. He was on stipend, from the school, providing different supports and things, but he was not making the money that he had been making previously, because we agreed for him to just go ahead and knock out his doctorate. So, at the time I was the one that had the salary for our household. And so, my health crisis took a lot of toll against him, because it was something that, he needed, a lot of times he would have to be pulled away from his research and things because of things that, maybe he had to do something with our children, because I wasn't able to do what I needed to, or what I normally did with our children. And so that kind of hindered the process being completed so quickly. But again, what I was saying about God not making any mistakes, I think that the challenges and things that we did go through, and the things that we overcome in the process, those things have helped prepare us for being full-time entrepreneurs. We are both and have been since 2015, 14 and 15. We have both been full-time entrepreneurs. And so with us being self-employed, there's, like you said, Dr. Natasha, you said, listen, we're pulled, there's opportunities and things coming in a million different directions, but we have to kind of streamline and understand, these things are, these are the opportunities that we're going to take advantage of right now. These are the opportunities that we're going to table. We'll have to come back to it. And these are the things that we're just not going to be able to do. And so I think that through that process, with the challenges that we had while he was pursuing his doctorate, that helped prepare us for where we are now. And I don't believe in work-life balance. It's a teeter, it literally is a teeter. It's a juggling act. It's a teeter type. But like you said, you have to be intentional. And so we have, over the last few years, really started to hone in and pour into being intentional about the things that we do to help us improve. And we don't have it down, we're not masters of it, but we're actively and aggressively and intentionally working at it. And the growth over time, we can see the growth over time. And I think, when we had premarital counseling, our counselor told us, our minister told us about, communication, compassion, and compromise. And those things have been what we have literally focused on, being able to communicate effectively. For years, we were doing it all wrong. wrong, and more wrong. And we still don't always get it right now, but we are intentional about saying, hey, these are the things we need to talk. We need to sit down. We need to address X, Y, and Z. And so we're intentional about that. And I think that has been us both being willing to compromise and being willing to say, we may not get in my way. And then for us as women saying, I'm going to pick and choose my battle. I'm not going to say anything about this particular thing this time around, and it's hard because we on it. When we see something, we like, wait a minute, and so I have had to train myself to say, you know what, is the juice worth the squeeze? And say, it's just not, and I think that's helped us really kind of get through it. So
all right, Dr. Natasha.
That was really powerful, Sister Ryan. I'm telling you, just thinking about it, yes, I agree with everything that you said, and especially because what I learned that through Dr. Faison's process was that it was a process for me. It wasn't just his doctoral process. It was our marriage process. It was a lifestyle process. It wasn't just a single process. And with that, I had to learn, what I brought to him. Was it really a focus for his attention right now? Or is it something that I could manage? Or was it something that, that I could wait for another time? Because he was so into his research, his reading, his classes, the mentoring that he had with, his mentors and the dissertation committee and, all of that, and then working full time. And then still, preaching on the weekends. And so I had to be very strategic in what I wanted to bring to my husband's lap for his attention. But the other part was, I knew, there were some things that I could just handle. and by the grace of God. And but the other thing is I had to learn that it was a process. One of the ways that I really am thankful that I learned through the process was that I learned more about how my husband even saw himself and his own ability. And when I saw that he needed more support in reference to who he was becoming, I without hesitation jumped in and said, but you're going to be Dr. Faison. And so I'm really glad that I had the opportunity also to uplift him, whether it was emotionally, whether it was, telling him when he needed to take a break. There were times when I had to say, babe, you just need to step away, take a break, go for a walk, or sit and drink this lemonade, look at something on TV or read your favorite book or something, but you have to give yourself a break. And he appreciated those times. There were also those times when I just had to let him be, because it was so much in him, and he would get revelation about what he was researching and writing, whether that was 2 a.m. in the morning and he had to get out of bed to start writing. I just had to let him be so that what was developing could really come forth. And initially that wasn't as easy as I'm saying it now, because I wanted him to be who he's always been, and still have that my husband spoils me, so and still have that attention that he provides, and the support that he provides me. But what I did learn again was also to allow him to grow into Dr. Faison. And what that meant sometimes was, allowing him to write whenever he needed that opportunity, and just hold it down for him, just hold it down. And that's what I tried to do. I tried to, with the grace of God, I tell you.
Dr. Scott, may I offer perspective as well?
Yes.
When I was offered the opportunity to come to Pennsylvania, Natasha was a teacher and became an interim principal. And the opportunity, when I was offered the position to move from Raleigh here, Natasha was offered the opportunity to become interim. And I already knew the sister is smart, right? That's why I married her, yep. And they learned that she was smart, and I knew that they would eventually ask her to be principal. And so one of the decisions that I made was that I did not want my career to fall, her career to fall casualty to mine. And so we got together and we made the decision that when she was asked to be interim and they asked her to be principal, I said, let's think about us exploring a commuter marriage. And so we did that for about 5 years, probably 7 years, and had her to fly up. That's why we love BWI in Baltimore. We drove down and picked her up on Friday. We capitalized on that time and the conundrum. Thank you for giving us permission, Sister Ryan, to say we don't have work-life balance. We have life balance sometimes. And we managed to do it. And I think that is an interesting perspective that we've had in the nuance of our marriage. The other interesting perspective is, can you imagine Natasha in her giftedness to keep together a home in Raleigh, because I would fly home on the 4th Sundays. So she would keep together a home there, fly up here and keep together a home here, and then help me with the Lord's house. So 3 houses she was helping me keep together. And then I was going to school. So, relationship is important. You offer 3 C's, Sister Ryan. We have a coinage of quest that we have for our chapel, that we're intentional, being relational. that we participate in a concert of care, and we advance the legacy through character, leadership, and service. And most certainly, I can say that that's not only what our ministry offers, but we are intentional about trying to be relational. And then we try to participate in the concert of each other's care, because if there is a doctor and somebody smart in the house, is her. I know the truth. And that we try to advance the legacy, that legacy of education. So thank you for letting me share that.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad you shared that. So funny, I say the same thing. By far, my husband supersedes me in so many areas. I think that the doctorate is such a difficult process. I mean, I've met very few people that just go through the process and, it's all grand and they have no issues. But this idea of life becomes real. And being able to maneuver life while you have this goal. And as you all know, it's a monkey on your back. You have to finish because it's something that you started, and you don't even sleep well knowing that you're not finished, even when you want to give up. So I appreciate, as two strong Black men, specifically as we go through this movement where men have always mattered, but now with Black Lives Matter, Black men really are rising to the occasion to ensure that the legacy of who we are as a people truly continues. This pandemic has been a mess and a half, and I'm so grateful that each of you and your families are safe. I want to transition to just like online learning. Ryan, you talked about like, hey, we've been there doing that. Talk about how the pandemic has impacted, whether positive or negative, what you're currently pursuing as far as your business.
So, like I had mentioned before, fortunately, we were already kind of doing some virtual and remote programming prior to the pandemic. And so for us, when the pandemic happened, it just allowed us to really begin to focus on how can we grow that aspect of our business. However, we have to keep in mind that different like I mentioned before, that students learn differently, right? And they have different strengths, right? And so even with doing a virtual programming and remote learning programming, we have to be mindful of how the students that we are servicing and providing support for, we have to be mindful of how what are their learning strengths, or what is their learning style. And so, however, even with that being said, though, one of the things I do appreciate about doing this virtual learning is that incorporated in our programming, one of the things that we've been trying to strengthen, or kind of the main skill set that we've been trying to strengthen within our students, is the ability to self-learn. Because so many times I feel as though students, if they don't have a teacher there to kind of guide them through it, they will fall short. And that's what we don't want to happen, right? And so that's one thing that we've definitely been ramping up in our virtual programming, is really teaching students how can you self-learn? How do you learn? I mean, how can you develop the ability to be able to pick up a textbook, to look up a YouTube video, to look up even like now they have like the TikTok videos and things of that nature. How can you use that to give you an example of what you need to learn, and then kind of grow from there? And then also, how can parents use these same resources to now provide some support to their students as well, right? And so I think the pandemic can be potentially a blessing in disguise, but it comes with you have to have the right attitude towards it. The reason why I mention that is because so many parents out there, their children are hearing them say, "Oh, I can't learn like this. I can't learn like this," and in turn, their child is actually taking on that characteristic, and they're really hurting their child. Instead of kind of helping them have a better attitude towards it. And granted, not saying that it's going to be easy. That's not what we're trying to say. But however, going into it with a much better attitude allows for you to make the adjustments, to be a little bit more adaptable in in how you are adjusting to the virtual learning environment. And so for us, like I said, we've been, even though we were doing it a few years prior to, this has allowed us to really kind of grow it a little bit more. But then also it also has allowed us to help our students a little bit better as well, because now we're really focusing on helping our students to learn, hey, even though we're meeting with you once per week or maybe even twice per week, the other 6 days, other 5 days or so, these are some things that you can do to strengthen your own ability and not wait to meet with us or not wait to meet with one of our staff and so forth. So that's one of the things that we've been really pushing for our students. Some students are having a great amount of success for it. I mean, success with it. Other students, it's still a work in progress. But at the end of the day, I really feel as though, each student hopefully can increase their skill set, because this is what they're going to need when they go to a Morgan and they go to a Lincoln, and then their introductory, biology class is 50 students, 60 students, right? And so, they're not going to get that one-on-one attention or, that closer, more intimate attention that they would get in high school. Now they're going to have to be able to crack open that book. They're going to be able to have to, ask the right questions to their teachers and their professors. And they're going to have to be able to, log onto a YouTube video or Khan Academy or whatever these other resources are, and begin to help them, really help themselves learn a little bit better. And so that's kind of been our approach to this virtual learning.
Dr. Scott, can I piggyback or can I interject? So I think that
Antonika, before you piggyback, when you're talking, can you give the viewers, Ryan talked about, I'm sorry, Dante talked about, the mindset shift and, approaching it with a positive attitude. And I'm thinking about statistics say that, majority of Americans are just pessimistic. And so how do you bring that optimistic attitude that I can be successful? How do you bring that to the table, or how do parents support their children to shift that mindset when they may not have it?
That's a really good question. One of the things I'm really big on, and this is one thing that we really train our staff on, is this. When you're working with a student, right, allow the student to do a lot of the talking. And what I mean by that is this: allow the student to articulate their ideas, allow them to articulate their, their thoughts on how they're either solving a problem, describing a problem, or whatever it may be. Allow them to do that. In turn, what that naturally does, it just naturally improves their confidence, right? Because now they see, wait a minute, I can do this, right? And so that's all we want to do. We want to just help them identify, hey, I can do it. Because once they can see they can do it, then all of a sudden that confidence meter just moves a little bit more, right? And so as a result, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to just kind of move that confidence meter just a little bit more, helping them identify that, wait a minute, I can describe what I'm doing. It was kind of tough to explain it, but you know what? I think I got it. I can explain to you what I'm doing. So for a parent out there, one of the things I always encourage my parents to do is this: when you're seeing your child doing their homework or whatever it may be, or maybe they just finished their homework, just stop them, ask them, hey, I see that you did number 2. How did you do it? And just let them articulate to you what they did. You'd be surprised at how just that small little piece, doing it, every so often, how that's just going to naturally just improve their confidence, and in turn it's going to just naturally kind of improve their attitude towards wanting to explain what they're doing, to even participate in class. Because we all know that the students that typically get the best grades in the class are the ones that typically are participating the most. And so that's why having them explain and having them articulate their thoughts and ideas is very important. And even if it just comes to just simply asking a question, right? Just want to encourage that dialogue. And as a result, that will, or at least what we have seen, that has naturally allowed them to, have a much better attitude towards what they're doing. Because then when they see something that they are not familiar with, they at least say, hey, I at least know what questions to ask is why I'm stuck, instead of just sitting there and looking at the problem. So that's what we've been encouraging, is really getting students to really speak a little bit more, have a little bit more open dialogue, whether it's with the staff, whether it's with their parents, or even with their teachers, be able to ask the questions a little bit more. And so far we've been seeing some really good results from that. So
that's good. Go ahead, Antonika. I know you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, so the point, and he spoke to it a lot, but what I wanted to say, even for the younger children, because I know, like, in the beginning, like it was, and even still, people who have children who are these preschool babies, these kindergarten first, these the younger elementary students who are not as self-sufficient as, you know, say a third through fifth grader or a middle schooler or a high schooler that need the support. What I have seen is a greater sense of community. I've seen a lot of people really wrapping their arms around each other and coming together and saying, hey, you know, this is what I'm doing, you know, and for us, you know, we're not only supporting, but we're in the fire with the parents because we have school-age children. We have an elementary student, we have a high school student. And so, you know, one of the things that we started recently was like a parent minute, you know, really just saying, hey, you know, this is what we found to be a useful for us, and we want to share with you because we're in this together. This is not a us thing, this is not a them thing, this is not a you thing. This is a us coming together and saying, hey, this is the issue, this is what I need support in. Where, you know, what are the resources, tips, strategies, what can you provide me with, and us really sharing with each other. And I've also seen that not only just as parents, but also as a teaching community. You know, this pandemic honestly has been beautiful for the educators because I'm seeing educators come together worldwide and really saying, hey, this is, you know, this is the best of us, and really looking for how, because contrary to what people want to believe and say, teachers do miss their children. They do want to go back to their classrooms, and they know that, you know, in person, you know, how you're able, some things just you're not able to transfer virtually, so they miss it. But at the same time, you know, we're adopting the attitude of anyhow. What can we do? What are the tips? What are you doing over here? What are you doing in Georgia? What are you doing over in Russia? What are you doing over in the UK? You know, what are those things that we are going to use so that we can help our kids get to where they want? And not really making excuses, but saying, you know, this is the situation, these are the cards we're dealt, and so we're going to make the best of it, and really transferring that not only to the children, but also to the families.
Yeah, I agree. Fred, at one point, I don't know if we were on the air yet, but we were talking about the impact of COVID long term. Like, what's going to happen to the children? My children who are in high school, 4 years from now, they will come to you. And so what do you perceive as the long-term impact to students who are K through 12 during the pandemic? And so I'm thinking about 2 years of no testing, 2 years of minimum accountability for the school. And so, but they are in pursuit of a college degree.
Well, let me answer it this way. And shout out to Morgan State, the orange and blue. Yeah, the other orange and blue. And of course, shout out to St. Augustine's University. I'm still trying to learn how not to say college. But, you know, that has been the success of the HBCU. And we can learn a lot from the historically Black college and university. I mean, there are 103 of them. And when you look at the statistics, the HBCU has continued to produce no matter what societal issues have been going on. What my sister Ryan said has not been easy, but we just had to do. And so we are thinking about that now as educators and researchers, that we're going to receive those students that you all are preparing virtually and doing what we have to do. But it also sends notice to us that we've got to start preparing and thinking about how we serve these students now. One of the things that we've done here at Lincoln when we received this class who didn't have a graduation, and we tried to go back and to give this freshman class that came in, tried to go back and create in our rites of passage ceremony, tried to create ceremony for them. And we invited, they were socially distanced with their masks. We observed all of the protocols, but we wanted to give some type of celebration to say, hey, it's over. And now you started a new journey. And so we've got to study to see how we can be a blessing and innovative. We've got to, like Sister Ryan said, we've got to come together and we've got to start talking. The high schools and the elementary schools and the middle schools have to be in dialogue. We have to be a community. And this pandemic has brought out the best of us, and it has also shown us the opportunities where we must improve as a society. But I am really grateful, if you will, let me throw some of this research that I spent all this money on and trying to deduce. But one of the results of my research is what I allude to as the 5C blessing for the African American. The first blessing is the Black child. The second blessing is the Black community. The third blessing is the Black church. The fourth blessing is the Black college. And the fifth blessing is the Black culture. And all of these can contribute to this K through 16 through life, that Black child. And our history connotes that it was because of the Black child that community was created. And because of the Black child, the community created the religious or spiritual institution, as we know as the Black church or the other institutions that serve us. And then it was because of the Black church that the Black church said, we got to educate little Freddie. And they started the Black college. And it was because of the Black college that it contributed to the Black culture. Even in the midst of all of these challenges of 400 years of slavery and the aftermath, it gave to us Thurgood Marshall. It gave to us Langston Hughes. It gave to us all of these Booker T. Washingtons. And it's so funny now, every time I'm looking at the Ryans, I'm thinking about, wow, just listen to them. I wonder what philosophy they're espousing and what Black person helped to create that paradigm for us to see ourselves greater. And so we cannot negate, thank you, Sister Ryan, we cannot negate the power that we have to say, we can't help it. We're in the pandemic, but we're going to work with what we got. And the college has to do it. And the church has to do it. And the community has to do it. And thank God the Ryans are in the community because they're teaching people how to think. Lord, if I had a Ryan years ago to ask me how you feel and build up my confidence. And so we all have a call. And I'm concluding this. I knew years ago that I was called to preach the gospel. I knew that. I just didn't know how that was going to work out because I had all these issues and still don't know. That's in God's hands, right? But we cannot negate our call. Our call is just as sacred being an educator. Your call is just as sacred contributing through science. Your call is just as sacred by being a principal. There is nothing anymore. No one is higher than anyone else. We all comprise the community, specifically the Black community. And no matter who's in office, we still had Martin. And no matter what laws were, I feel myself preaching. Let me calm down.
Yes, preach.
I can preach it now.
Yes, that is
all right. We're gonna be all right. We're gonna be all right. Tell Big Mama to keep teaching and bring little Nene out there and click and tell Nene to bring her assignments. But we're gonna be all right. She might not need that belt, but she might just need to ask them how did they figure it out. But we are gonna be all right.
Oh my goodness, thank you for that. I cannot believe our time is up. So many golden nuggets that were shared for, I thought about power couples in education, but just if you are a person that's on this road, whether it's a bachelor's, master's, doctorate, or if you have children going through K through 16, this is for you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Inside with Dr. Scott. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. And again, to our special panelists, I so appreciate you taking out the time out of your busy schedule just to give our viewers something to think about. It was so rich. As a good pastor would say, I think I'll get this myself. All right, until next Wednesday, we look forward to the next time.